Here I'm going to look at two examples where we solve quadratics by using what's called the square root method. The square root method is a method where essentially what you have is the square term. And in this case, what you're able to do is you're able to isolate your square term, whether it's a monomial, meaning single term, or a binomial, meaning two terms, and then be able to get the variable all on its own simply by taking the square root. So if you look at this first example, notice I have 3x squared equals 21. The first thing I want to do is divide everything by 3. I end up having x squared is equal to 7. Now if you notice, my square term has been totally isolated by itself. It's a single variable. Therefore, the only thing I have to do now is take the square root. So by taking the square root, I end up with plus or minus the square root of 7. Okay? Now the plus or minus signifies the fact that quadratics have two solutions. So when you take the square root of them, plus or minus applies. Now when we're talking about binomials, the first thing we have to do here is isolate my binomial by getting the 2 out of here. So we're going to divide everything by 2, and we're going to get 5a minus 2 squared is equal to negative 20. Now if you notice, my binomial is totally on its own. So at this point we could go ahead and take the square root. So we have 5a minus 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 20. Now at this point I have to do a little reducing. And the reason for that is because we cannot have a negative under the radical. So this negative here is going to pull out of my radical as an I. It's the complex. So we are going to end up with plus or minus the square root of 20i. But then 20 can reduce. 20 breaks down into 4 and 5. And the 4 pulls out as 2 and 2. So in this case we end up with plus or minus 2i square roots of 5. Now that means we still have to solve for our variable. So we have that 5a minus 2 is equal to the complex. So here what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 to both sides. So my 5a is going to equal 2 plus or minus 2i square root of 5. Divide everything by 5 and we end up with a being 2 over 5 plus or minus 2 square roots of 5 over 5i. So there you have it, either a monomial term or a binomial term where we solve the quadratic using what was called the square root method. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I do hope you enjoyed this very short video. If you come up with any examples that you would like to see, send those to me. I'd be happy to do them for you. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you next time.